you need to evolve. I mean, we see it in those fossil records, and we see it in NFL history. You need to evolve or you're going to get phased out. And I don't think Jason Garrett is that modern, innovative offensive guy that Daniel Jones really needs.
The NFC East preseason division power rankings are here. I'm Cody Roark of Pro Football Network, joined alongside our lead NFL analyst, Dalton Miller, and Ian Cummings. As we go through, based on the offseason moves that each of these teams made, we factor in how we think the division is going to play out as it stands today, always subject to change throughout the season, contingent upon a multitude of different factors. But Dalton, I'm going to throw it to you, my man. The NFC East is a division that, obviously, with you covering the Cowboys, being up close and personal, you spend a lot of time watching the Cowboys, Giants, Eagles, and Washington football team as it stands right now in the preseason. How do you see the NFC East shaking out this year from first, second, third, and fourth place?
So the Dallas Cowboys have to be the favorites. With that offense, if healthy, which is obviously a big question mark because we've seen Tyron Smith has not been able to stay healthy in the past 5 years. La'el Collins came into camp last year a bit out of shape and then ended up being injured for the entire season. And Dak Prescott is obviously coming off a horrific ankle injury that seems to be 100%. Now, every year it's best shape of our lives. You know, that's how these things go. But that offense, in my opinion, just from top to bottom, is one of the top 2 or 3 offenses in the entire NFL. Their offensive line, if healthy, is the top 5 offensive line in the NFL. I think that they have the best or the second best wide receiving group in the NFL. They have Dak Prescott, who I still believe is an underrated quarterback in the NFL. And then Ezekiel Elliott, who is your ground and pound guy who can also catch 70 passes a year, and it won't be super dynamic. But that's not what he's used for, because that's what Tony Pollard is for. Tony Pollard is that dynamic guy who's going to break a bunch of tackles and make big plays. So they have an entire offensive roster. It's fantastic. Now, defensively is where their issue is. They have thrown a lot of assets towards the defense recently. Kelvin Joseph and Micah Parsons in rounds 1 and 2 this year. Chauncey Golston and Osa Odighizuwa in round 3. Also Nashawn Wright in round 3, which pick I hated, but they made it. They went almost entirely defense in this draft, which is what they had to do. It's still going to be a top, 15 at best defense, but that's all it needs to be is average. They need to get there, though. That's the issue. If that secondary can hold its own, this is a team that can win, 10 to 12 games this year and win the division. Now, when you look at second, you're looking at the Washington football team. I think that from a roster standpoint, they have the second best roster. I think they have the best defense in the NFL, not just in the NFC East. And that's with a very nice Giants defense that we'll talk about here in a second. But when you look at that defense, what is the weakness of it? You have Chase Young, Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Montez Sweat, Matt Ioannidis, and Tim Settle defensive line. It's the best defensive line in the NFL. It's one of the best defensive lines I've ever seen. And Chase Young, Montez Sweat, both still progressing as edge rushers. It's very, very scary. Cole Holcomb has been one of the more underrated guys at linebacker the past couple of years. And then Jamin Davis was their first round pick this year. Their secondary, very, very good as well. And they're a very well-coached team defensively, which you expect from a Jack Del Rio defense and a Ron Rivera coach team. So they're the second best team. The only thing holding them back really is their quarterback situation with Ryan Fitzpatrick, who was good last year, but not great. And that's kind of how he's been for his entire career. He's a roller coaster. Adding Curtis Samuel to this offense was a really, really big move from them. Terry McLaurin, obviously a fantastic receiver. And then adding Diami Brown in round 3 was big as well for them. I think that overall they're a team that could do damage, but you're going to have to get a career best Ryan Fitzpatrick, which at his advanced age is a big question mark. After that, you have the New York Giants, who, listen, a lot of people seem to be really high on the New York Giants. They made a bunch of additions this year to their offense. John Ross, Kenny Golladay offensively is big. Kadarius Toney was their first round pick. Guys, you still got Jason Garrett as your offensive coordinator, and Daniel Jones is still your quarterback. Guys, you can have this immense faith in your quarterback, but when have we seen guys that turn the ball over at a high rate stop doing that? We're trying to see it from Carson Wentz. Can Daniel Jones stop not just turning the ball over through the air, but his fumbles are horrific. So on top of his turnover issues, you still have Jason Garrett, who runs an offense that is antiquated at best. So I'm looking to see, on top of a bad offensive line, where you guys see that offense going. Because I don't see it being as good as Washington's offense overall. I don't see Daniel Jones making a big enough step or Saquon Barkley being good enough as a running back to elevate that offense. I think that defense could be top 10 in the league, but the defense can only get you so far. You're going to have to score points. I don't see them scoring enough points to really put them over the top. And then the Philadelphia Eagles right now are a train wreck. I'm hoping the best personally for Jalen Hurts. I like Jalen Hurts. I didn't love him as a prospect, but he appears to be a great leader, a guy that you can rally behind. That offensive line is good, but often injured. At wide receiver, Devontae Smith, he could be big. Jalen Reagor is a very big unknown. Behind them, it's Travis Fulgham, who wasn't much of anything until he really kind of exploded for a couple games last year and then went away quickly. The defensive side of the ball is aging and in a lot of trouble. So that's the kind of the bottom feeder of the NFC East. And like I said, I've covered the Cowboys for a long time, and that's, music to my ears as a Cowboys fan, but as an objective, football journalist, I always like to see the Philadelphia Eagles and the Cowboys competing for the NFC East. I just don't see it this year.
Yeah, well, I think one of the most intriguing offenses that you mentioned, I think, is contingent upon quarterback play in Washington. But, man, put it in reverse, Terry. I can't wait to see more Terry McLaurin this year. He is so damn fun to watch. But, Ian, I'm going to throw it to you, man. How do you see the NFC East playing out this upcoming season? Like I said, I think that the Cowboys returning a lot of key players back on the offensive side of the ball. When Dak was healthy last year, they were the most explosive offense in football. I have a hard time unless Dak hits a little bit of a wall, which I don't expect him to do. I expect that to be the case once again here in 2021.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, he has the offensive line, he has the receivers, and he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So I think you can just leave it there and just go. And I made a face, but I was kind of channeling my inner WFT fan.
Yeah. And listen, the defense won't be as bad this year, almost by default, because last year they just first couple of weeks of the season they just had no clue what they were doing schematically. It was a completely new defense and no offseason to implement it. And just personally, some players on that defense that aren't super adept at picking up and implementing new information. I'll say it that way.
I think Dan Quinn's a great addition for them. Micah Parsons and also Jabril Cox, I think, will be an underrated threat for them on the defensive side of the ball. So, Ian, how do you see the division shaking out, my man?
Yeah, so I made a face, but I was mainly joking. Definitely Dallas number one. Dak Prescott's really good. The defense can't really get worse than last year, like you said, and they have a very explosive offense behind Dak. I will say Washington is really interesting. I've been covering them since 2017 at another site. This is the strongest roster in Washington that I've seen yet, personally. It's not really close, but the only issue is quarterback, because really, you have the offensive line now. They had a couple guys, free agent signings, who actually played surprisingly well last year. You have Chase Roulier coming back at center, who's developing into one of the better centers in the league. You got a ton of firepower in that receiving core all of a sudden with Terry, Diami, Curtis Samuel, Logan Thomas. Really, he was a QB tight end transfer, and he ended up playing very well last year in his first legit season as a tight end. And then on the defensive side of the ball, we don't really need to go over that, because the defensive line, best in the league. Linebacking core, very young and very high upside. And then the secondary too. I mean, they got Kendall Fuller, William Jackson, Jimmy Moreland was pretty good in the slot last year. Benjamin Saint-Juste, I think is how you pronounce the name. Yeah, he's going to be a good guy as a press corner on the outside. I mean, Cameron Curl too, 7th round safety, played very well last year. So really the only hole is quarterback. And in a sense, I think Washington and New York are actually kind of similar teams, because you look at the defenses, the very strong defenses, and they actually added a lot of firepower in their receiving cores. The only question is quarterback. And then in the Giants case, which is why I think Washington has a comfortable lead over the Giants, the offensive line for Washington is much better. So I think the Giants are number 3 because their defense is pretty strong. It just depends on what Daniel Jones can do. And honestly, like we said, I mean, if he had a better offensive coordinator, you maybe have more hope for him. But listen, all right, guys, you have to evolve, okay? 2.5 billion years of geological evidence tell you need to evolve. I mean, we see it in those fossil records, and we see it in NFL history. You need to evolve or you're going to get phased out. And I don't think Jason Garrett is that modern, innovative offensive guy that Daniel Jones really needs. And I think Daniel Jones, like Dalton said, turns the ball over a lot. And with a not so good offensive line, who's to say that's going to get better this year? I don't think it is. So I think they are 3rd, and then the Eagles are pretty safely 4th. I mean, me and Dalton talked about it in our schedule breakdown for the Eagles. They're actually not bad in the trenches, right? They have a pretty decent offensive line, and then on defense too, they have a lot of guys at edge like Brandon Graham, Ryan Kerrigan, Josh Sweat, Fletcher Cox on the interior. But I don't think the roster is well-rounded enough to support a guy like Jalen Hurts, who has a lot of pressure on him to be a starting quarterback this year. So I would like to see him succeed because, again, he seems like a very good guy. He's talented too, but I don't think the Eagles are quite there. I think they're kind of safely the fourth team.
A brand new head coach as well. A lot of questions specifically, and there's also reports out there that your team is eyeing the situation of Deshaun Watson. If he were to become available, you're never, as a guy like Jalen Hurts in his position, when you hear stuff like that, it would be really easy to say, okay, hey, they're looking at other options. This is a big year for me. I got a chip on my shoulder. So could we see the Eagles and Jalen Hurts have a massive chip on his shoulder? Will it pay off in a division? More than likely, gentlemen, the final thing, quick rapid fire answer. Will the NFC East be better overall this year than it was last year?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we're in agreement. And
yep.
Football fans, if you agree with us or disagree with us, let us know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, though, to get access to the NFC South preseason division power ranking that we're going to bring your way, courtesy Pro Football Network Daily.